Welcome to Storytales. Please like this video and subscribe to Storytales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The crystal chandeliers of Chicago's Grand Meridian Hotel cast their ethereal glow across the charity gala's attendees. Calvin Mercer adjusted his midnight blue tie, his calculating eyes scanning the crowded ballroom. Each gesture was measured, precise like the lines of code that had built his tech empire. The air hummed with classical music and a murmur of Chicago's elite discussing their millions. His wife, Lena, stood beside him, her black designer dress hugging every curve. She laughed at something one of the board members said, but Calvin noticed how her fingers kept brushing against her clutch where her phone lay hidden. She checked it 17 times in the past hour he'd counted. Another wonderful event, Mr. Mercer, Thomas Wright, one of his major investors, raised his champagne glass. The older man's eyes crinkled with genuine admiration. Your company's dedication to children's education is admirable. Calvin nodded, his expression remaining neutral. Technology should open doors for everyone, especially the next generation. He felt Lena's hand slip away from his arm. "Excuse me," she murmured, already reaching for her phone. "I need to check on that marketing campaign launch." Calvin watched her retreat toward the terrace, her stilettos making soft sounds against the marble floor. She'd been doing this more frequently lately, these sudden departures, these urgent work matters that couldn't wait. 3 months ago, she would have stayed by his side, working the room with practiced charm. "Your wife seems busy these days," Thomas observed, following Calvin's gaze. "Success demands attention," Calvin replied, taking a measured sip of his whiskey. The ice clinked against the glass, a sound that reminded him of breaking things, of shattered promises and trust. He remembered his mother's empty words, the bottles hidden under her bed, the men who came and went. "I promise this is the last time, Calvin." But it never was. Trust was a currency he'd learned to spend carefully, if at all. Now, watching Lena's silhouette through the glass doors, he felt that familiar tingle of suspicion crawl up his spine. "Calvin," a woman's voice cut through his thoughts. Camila Royce, Lena's best friend, approached with a glass of red wine in hand. Her smile seemed strained, not quite reaching her eyes. "Where has our dear Lena disappeared to?" "Work calls," Calvin replied smoothly. He noted how Camila's expression flickered something between concern and, "Was that guilt?" "Always working, that one," Camila said, sipping her wine. "The marketing department must be lost without her." Calvin's mind filed away her tone, the slight emphasis on working. Camila knew something or suspected something. He would remember that. The evening progressed like a well-orchestrated symphony. Calvin played his part: the successful entrepreneur, the generous philanthropist, the devoted husband. But his mind kept tracking Lena's movements, noting how her smile seemed brighter when she returned from her phone calls, how her cheeks carried a flush that hadn't come from wine. "The quarterly numbers are impressive," Victoria Chun, his CFO, approached with a tablet. Her efficiency was one reason he'd promoted her no small talk, straight to business. "The new security protocol is already generating buzz." Calvin studied the figures, his mind compartmentalizing between business and the growing knot of suspicion in his gut. "Schedule a meeting for Monday. We need to discuss the Asian market expansion." As Victoria walked away, Calvin caught Lena checking her phone again, her thumb scrolling quickly through messages. She didn't notice him watching, didn't see how his eyes narrowed slightly at the small smile playing on her lips. "Mind if I steal your husband for a dance?" Amanda Pierce, one of their regular donors, appeared beside Lena. Lena barely glanced up from her phone. "Of course not. I need to make a quick call anyway." Calvin led Amanda to the dance floor, his movements precise as they swayed to the music. From this vantage point, he could see Lena slip out to the terrace again. Her fingers flew across her phone screen, typing with an urgency that had nothing to do with marketing campaigns. "I heard Mercer Technologies is launching a new cybersecurity division," Amanda said, drawing his attention back. "We go where innovation leads us," Calvin replied, his eyes still tracking Lena through the glass. She was smiling at her phone now, a private smile he hadn't seen directed at him in months. The dance ended, and Calvin made his way to the bar. He ordered another whiskey, watching the amber liquid swirl around the ice. Behind him, he heard Camila's voice, slightly slurred from wine. "Lena, honey, you need to be more careful," she whispered, not realizing Calvin was within earshot. "People are starting to notice." "It's just work, Cam," Lena cut her off. "You worry too much." Calvin didn't turn around. He didn't need to. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture he'd seen before. His mother had used the same excuses, the same defensive tone. The drive home was quiet, filled only with the soft purr of their Mercedes engine. Chicago's skyline glittered against the night sky, a testament to ambition and secrets. Calvin drove with one hand on the wheel, his posture relaxed despite the storm brewing inside. "The foundation raised over $2 million tonight," he said, his voice carrying no inflection that Lena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down. "That's wonderful, honey. The tech education program will help so many children." "You seem distracted." He took the turn onto Lake Shore Drive, the lake a dark expanse beside them. "Just work. The new campaign is crucial for Q3. She touched his arm lightly. "You understand how it is." Calvin did understand. He understood patterns, behaviors, changes. He understood how people try to hide things behind smiles and excuses. His mother had been a master at it. They rode the private elevator to their penthouse, the tension building with each floor. Lena's phone buzzed again. She checked it under the pretense of fixing her hair in the elevator's mirrored wall. "I'm going to take a shower," she said as soon as they entered their home. "I'm exhausted." Calvin watched her disappear into their bedroom. He loosened his tie and walked to the kitchen, pouring himself another drink. Through the open plan of their home, he could hear the shower running, and then, moments later, the soft sounds of Lena's voice. She was on the phone again, speaking too quietly for him to hear the words. He didn't need to hear them. The pattern was clear now, written in every furtive glance at her phone, every rushed excuse, every late night at the office. History was repeating itself, but this time he wasn't a helpless child watching his world crumble. This time, he had the power to do something about it. Calvin walked to the window, staring out at his city. Chicago spread before him like a chessboard, and he was very, very good at chess. Behind him, the shower stopped. Lena's voice continued its hushed conversation. He took another sip of his whiskey, his reflection in the window, showing no emotion. Tomorrow, he would begin his investigation. Tonight, he would play his role, the trusting husband, the successful businessman, the fool she thought he was. But Calvin Mercer was no fool. And Lena was about to learn exactly what happened to people who betrayed him. The morning after the gala, Calvin sat in his chosen spot at the Daily Grind, away from his usual downtown haunts. The independent coffee shop offered something his regular places couldn't: anonymity. Here, he wasn't Calvin Mercer, tech mogul. He was just another patron with a laptop and a coffee. Steam rose from his black coffee as he reviewed contracts on his screen. The morning crowd ebbed and flowed around him, their chatter a white noise that helped him focus. His phone buzzed with a message from Lena. Early meeting with the creative team. "See you tonight." He didn't reply. Instead, he opened their shared calendar, the one Lena thought he rarely checked. No marketing meeting was scheduled. Another lie to add to the growing collection. The bell above the door chimed as customers came and went. Calvin's fingers moved across his keyboard, responding to emails, reviewing reports. To anyone watching, he appeared absorbed in his work. But his peripheral vision caught everything: each person who entered, each potential threat or opportunity. A shadow fell across his table. "Are you Calvin Mercer?" He looked up to find a young woman standing there, her hands clenched into fists. Dark circles under her eyes suggested sleepless nights, and her intense gaze held the kind of pain that turned to rage. "I am," he replied, closing his laptop with deliberate slowness. "I'm Aria Quinn." Her voice trembled with barely contained fury. "Tell your cheating wife to leave my boyfriend alone." The words hung in the air between them. Calvin's expression didn't change, didn't reveal the sudden crystallization of his suspicions. Around them, The coffee shop continued its morning rhythm, oblivious to the bomb that had just been dropped at table 7. "Please sit down," he said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Arya hesitated, thrown off by his calm demeanor. She had expected denial, anger, perhaps even a scene. His composure unsettled her more than any reaction could have. "How do you take your coffee?" Calvin asked, signaling to the barista. "I what?" Arya blinked, her prepared speech derailing. "Coffee," he repeated patiently. "How do you take it?" "Black," she said, sinking into the chair. "Like my current mood." Calvin ordered another coffee, his voice level and courteous. When the barista left, he turned his full attention to Arya. His gaze was analytical, as if she were a complex equation he needed to solve. "How long?" he asked, his voice steady. 3 months. Arya's laugh was bitter. Like the coffee, she wrapped her hands around. "At least that's when I found out. Ken, that my boyfriend or ex-boyfriend now, I guess. He's a personal trainer at Elite Fitness. Your wife is his special client." She made air quotes with her fingers, her nail polish chipped and worn. "Tell me about Ken," Calvin said, taking a careful sip of his coffee. "Ken Sloan." Arya spat the name like poison. 28. Thinks he's God's gift to women. Started at Elite Fitness 8 months ago. We dated for 6 months before. She trailed off, her knuckles white around her cup. "Before my wife became his client, Calvin finished for her." "Yeah." Arya's eyes filled with angry tears. "I found messages on his phone. Pictures. They meet at his apartment in River North when they're not at the gym. He thinks I don't know about the apartment, but I followed him one day." Calvin absorbed each detail, filing them away. "The apartment's address, 219 West Huron Street, Unit 1505. Arya pulled out her phone, showing him a photo of the building. "He's there with her right now. That's why I came looking for you." Calvin glanced at his own phone, where Lena's message about the marketing meeting still displayed. The pieces aligned perfectly, forming a picture he'd suspected but hadn't confirmed until now. "Thank you for telling me," he said, his tone unchanged. Arya blinked, confused by his reaction. "That's it? Your wife is sleeping with my boyfriend, and you're thanking me. Information is valuable, Miss Quinn." Calvin stood, straightening his suit jacket. "Especially the kind that confirms what you already suspected." "Wait," Arya called as he turned to leave. "What are you going to do?" Calvin paused, looking back at her. "Would you like to help me find out?" Something in his voice made Arya sit up straighter. The rage in her eyes shifted, focusing into something more purposeful. "What do you mean?" "Not here." Calvin placed a business card on the table. "That number is private. Call it tonight at 8 if you're interested in justice rather than simple revenge." He left her sitting there, walking out into the Chicago morning. The sun was bright, but he felt cold inside, the familiar cold that came with certainty. His phone buzzed again, another text from Lena. "Meeting running over. Don't wait for lunch." Calvin allowed himself a small smile as he slid into the back of his waiting car. "Home," he instructed his driver. The car pulled away from the curb, merging into Chicago's morning traffic. Calvin watched the city pass by, his mind already formulating plans. In his pocket, his phone contained a recording of his entire conversation with Arya, one of many pieces of evidence he would collect. He thought about Lena, probably wrapped in Ken's arms right now, thinking she was clever, thinking she was safe. He thought about his mother, all those years ago, spinning lies that a child could see through but couldn't fight. But he wasn't a child anymore. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "This is Arya. I don't want to wait until 8. Calvin's reply was immediate. "Patience, Miss Quinn. Revenge is a dish best served with precision." He had the driver pull over at a small park. The car idled as Calvin made a call. "Victor, clear your afternoon. We need to talk about asset protection." Victor Hale, his attorney, didn't ask questions. That's why Calvin kept him on retainer. "I'll have the papers ready by 2. Calvin ended the call and looked out at the park. A couple walked hand in hand along the path, trusting, oblivious. He remembered walking with Lena like that, back when he believed in second chances. His phone chimed with another message from Arya. "I have more proof. Pictures. Messages. Everything. Keep them," Calvin replied. We'll need every piece for what comes next. The car pulled away from the curb, heading toward his office. Calvin's reflection in the window showed no emotion, no pain, no rage. Just clarity. Pure, cold clarity, because now he knew. And knowledge, in Calvin Mercer's world, was more than power. It was a weapon. Back in his office at Mercer Technologies, Calvin sat behind his desk, the city spread out before him through the windows. The morning's conversation with Arya Quinn had confirmed his suspicions, but Calvin never acted on suspicions alone. He needed proof, absolute, undeniable evidence that would leave no room for explanations or excuses. His fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision as he accessed a program of his own design. The interface was elegant, minimal, a product of countless nights spent coding, preparing for scenarios exactly like this. The program could bypass most commercial security measures, leaving no trace of its intrusion. Computer security is only as strong as human nature, he murmured, remembering the words he'd spoken at a cybersecurity conference last year. How ironic that he would use these skills not to protect, but to expose. Calvin entered Lena's phone number into the program. Within minutes, he had full access to her device. Messages, photos, location data, everything she thought was private now displayed on his screen. He started with her text messages, his eyes moving methodically through the conversations. The thread with Ken Sloan appeared under a fake name, PT Sessions. Calvin's mouth tightened slightly as he scrolled through their exchanges. Miss you already. Last night was incredible. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. These training sessions are the highlight of my week. The way you touched me, I can't stop thinking about it. When can we meet? I need you. Photos followed, each one a knife in Calvin's chest. Lena in hotel rooms he didn't recognize. Lena wearing lingerie he'd never seen. Lena in Ken's arms, both of them smiling at the camera with the reckless confidence of people who thought they wouldn't get caught. Calvin downloaded everything to a secure server, organizing the evidence methodically. Dates, times, locations all cataloged with mechanical precision. His face remained impassive as he worked, as if he were reviewing quarterly reports instead of proof of his wife's infidelity. He pulled up her location history next. Regular visits to Elite Fitness, always followed by trips to the River North apartment Arya had mentioned. The timestamps aligned perfectly with Lena's late meetings and marketing emergencies. A message notification popped up on his screen. Lena to Ken. Meeting canceled. I can come over now if you're free. Calvin checked the time. 2:17 p.m. Lena was supposed to be in a budget review meeting with her marketing team. He opened his email and composed a message to her office, just confirming our dinner reservations for tonight. Hope the budget review is going well. The reply came quickly. Still in the meeting. Running behind. Might have to cancel dinner. His fingers paused over the keyboard as another memory surfaced. His mother. Phone pressed to her ear. Of course I'm at work, Calvin. Where else would I be? He'd been 12, standing in the doorway of a stranger's apartment where he'd tracked her down, that a notification drew his attention back to the present. Lena had just used her credit card at a boutique near Ken's apartment. Calvin accessed the store's security feed through a backdoor in their system. The cameras showed Lena selecting expensive lingerie, her expression excited. Guilty, he opened another program, this one connected to the building security system at 219 West Huron Street. The cameras showed Lena entering through the lobby, taking the elevator to the 15th floor. The timestamp read 2:43 p.m. Calvin leaned back his chair, his mind processing everything he'd discovered. On his screen, a new message appeared from Ken to Lena. You look amazing in that new outfit. Can't wait to see you wear it again tomorrow. He accessed his private server and began compiling everything into organized folders. Text messages, photos, location data, security footage, credit card statements. Each piece of evidence was a bullet in the gun he was preparing to fire. His phone rang. Victor Hale. The papers are ready, his attorney said without preamble. Do you want me to walk you through the asset protection strategy? Not over the phone, Calvin replied. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He stood, straightening his tie as he looked out over the city. Chicago stretched below him, unaware of the storm brewing in this office. His phone buzzed with another message from Arya. Ken just posted a gym selfie with your wife in the background. Bastard's not even trying to hide it anymore. Calvin opened Instagram, finding Ken's profile. There was Lena, pretending to work out while sneaking glances at her trainer. The caption read, "Another great session with my favorite client. Hashtag personal training, hashtag dedication, hashtag Chicago fitness." He saved the post, adding it to his growing collection of evidence. Then he opened his secure messaging app and sent a text to Victor. "Prepare the non-disclosure agreements. We'll need them for what comes next." The reply was immediate. "Already done." "How many copies?" "2 for now. More later." Calvin gathered his things, each movement precise and controlled. As he walked to the elevator, his secretary called out. Mrs. Mercer left a message. She said not to wait up tonight, big presentation tomorrow. "Thank you, Rebecca," he replied, his voice neutral. Inside the elevator, he pulled out his phone and opened the location tracking app. Lena was still at Ken's apartment. The elevator descended, and Calvin thought about trust, how his mother had destroyed his ability to give it freely, and how Lena had proven that his caution had been justified all along. He thought about Ken Sloan, the arrogant trainer who thought he could take what belonged to Calvin Mercer. Most of all, he thought about justice. His car was waiting when he reached the lobby. As they drove to Victor's office, Calvin reviewed the evidence again, each photo and message burning itself into his memory. He would remember everything, every lie, every betrayal, every secret meeting. And when the time came, so would they. The car stopped outside Victor's building. Before getting out, Calvin sent one final message to Arya. "Evidence secured. Meeting my attorney now. Be ready." Her reply came quickly. Ready for what? Calvin allowed himself a small, cold smile as he typed. Ready to watch them burn. He stepped out into the afternoon sun, straightening his jacket. Above him, Chicago's skyscrapers reached toward the sky like steel and glass monuments to ambition. Calvin Mercer had built his empire in their shadows, and now he would use everything he'd learned to destroy the woman who had betrayed him, because some things couldn't be forgiven. Some betrayals demanded more than divorce papers and alimony checks. They demanded complete and total annihilation. Night had fallen over Chicago by the time Calvin returned to his penthouse. The city lights sparkled below like scattered diamonds, but he saw only reflections of his own cold clarity in the windows. The meeting with Victor had been productive, every legal document prepared, every loophole closed, every trap set with surgical precision. He poured himself a whiskey and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The glass was cool against his forehead as he closed his eyes, remembering the stack of papers Victor had shown him. Asset transfer documents, non-disclosure agreements, bank account modifications, everything needed to strip away every penny, every property, every shred of security from Lena's life. The timing has to be perfect, Victor had warned. One mistake, and she could protect herself legally. There won't be any mistakes, Calvin had replied. Now, standing in his darkened living room, he knew it was true. He never made mistakes. Not anymore. Not since his mother had taught him the price of trust. His phone vibrated another message from Arya. Ken's taking her to dinner tomorrow. I got a reservation at the same restaurant. Calvin took a slow sip of whiskey, considering. The restaurant surveillance would add another layer of evidence, another nail in their coffins. He typed back, "Good. Keep your distance. Observe only." The empty penthouse echoed with memories. Here was where Lena had first kissed him, both of them dizzy with champagne and success after his company's IPO. There was where she'd said yes to his proposal, tears of joy streaming down her face. All eyes, all performances worthy of an Oscar. His computer pinged with an alert. The tracking program showed Lena leaving Elite Fitness, her car heading toward home. Calvin sat at his desk, opening the surveillance feeds he'd gathered. On one screen, he watched Lena and Ken embracing in the parking lot. On another, their earlier text messages scrolled past. "I hate lying to him," Lena had written. "Then leave him," Ken had replied. "We could be together openly." It's not that simple. The prenup, Calvin's hand tightened on his glass. So that was it, the prenuptial agreement that protected his assets in case of divorce. She was waiting, planning, probably documenting everything she could use against him in court. The perfect wife, building her case while sleeping with her trainer. The elevator chimed, announcing Lena's arrival. Calvin remained in his office, listening to her movements through the penthouse. The rustle of her gym bag being set down. The soft pat of her feet on hardwood. The shower starting. He opened his laptop and began to type, his fingers moving across the keyboard with deadly precision. Lines of code appeared on the screen, a program that would track every message, every call, every movement. But this was just the beginning. A memory surfaced. His mother sobbing, begging his father for another chance. "I'll change," she'd promised. It meant nothing. He meant nothing. His father, weak with love, had believed her, had given her chance after chance until there was nothing left of him but a hollow shell. Calvin Mercer was not his father. He pulled up the dossier he'd compiled on Ken Sloan. Employment history, credit report, social media accounts. Every weakness, every vulnerability documented and categorized. The trainer thought he was clever, thought he could take what belonged to Calvin. He would learn differently. The shower stopped. Moments later, Lena's voice drifted through the penthouse as she took another phone call. More lies, more secrets, more ammunition for what was to come. Calvin opened a new document and began to write, mapping out his strategy. Phase 1, asset protection. Phase 2, social destruction. Phase 3, professional annihilation. Each step detailed, each contingency planned for. This wasn't about emotion, it was about execution. His phone buzzed with a text from Victor. Everything's in place. Just say when. Calvin typed back a single word, soon. He heard Lena moving around their bedroom, probably getting ready for bed. She would be reviewing her phone, deleting messages, covering her tracks. She didn't know that every deleted message was automatically backed up to his secure server, every photo saved, every lie documented. Another message from Arya. I want to help. Tell me what to do. Calvin considered her offer. She could be useful, a witness to Ken's character, a source of information about his habits and weaknesses. But she would need to be controlled, her rage channeled into something more precise than simple revenge. Patience, he replied. Everything must be perfect. He stood, walking to the bedroom. Lena was already in bed, her phone on the nightstand, her breathing even in pretend sleep. Calvin watched her for a moment, remembering how he had once loved her, once trusted her, once believed in the future they would build together. Foolish. Trust was for people who hadn't learned better. He returned to his office, closing the door softly. The night stretched ahead, full of possibilities. His computer hummed, gathering data, building evidence, preparing for war. On his screen, the plans for destruction waited for his command. Calvin took another sip of whiskey, feeling the burn. Tomorrow, he would begin. Tomorrow, the perfect masks would start to crack. Tomorrow, Lena and Ken would take their first steps toward annihilation, never knowing that every move was orchestrated, every freedom an illusion. The city gleamed beyond his windows, a testament to power and ambition. Calvin Mercer had built his empire in its shadows, and now he would use everything he'd learned to destroy those who had betrayed him. Because that's what this was, not a divorce, not a separation, but a war. And Calvin Mercer had never lost a war. The morning sun painted Chicago's skyline in shades of gold as Calvin waited in his private office at Mercer Technologies. His computer displayed multiple windows, surveillance footage from Elite Fitness, text message logs between Lena and Ken, bank statements showing suspicious transactions. Each piece of evidence had been cataloged with meticulous care. The knock at the door interrupted his review. Mr. Mercer, your 9 o'clock is here. Send her in. Arya Quinn entered, looking different from their coffee shop encounter. She traded her bartender's uniform for black jeans and a leather jacket. Her eyes still held that fierce anger, but it was more focused now, controlled. Nice office, she said, taking in the view. Very supervillain lair. Please sit. Calvin gestured to the chair across from his desk. Would you like coffee? I want revenge. Arya sat, leaning forward. But you already knew that. Calvin studied her for a moment. Tell me exactly what you want, Miss Quinn. Be specific. I want Ken destroyed. Her voice carried no hesitation. His reputation, his career, everything he cares about. I want him to feel what I felt when I found those messages. And Lena, your wife. Aria's laugh was sharp. She knew about me. Ken told her everything. Made jokes about his crazy ex. They both deserve what's coming. Calvin opened a folder on his desk. Before we continue, I need you to sign this. He slid a document across to her. Non-disclosure agreement. Everything we discuss stays between us. Aria picked up the papers, scanning them. You really are thorough, aren't you? Thoroughness keeps people alive and out of prison. Calvin's voice remained steady. Sign it if you're serious about this partnership. She grabbed a pen and signed without further hesitation. There. Now tell me the plan. Calvin stood, walking to the window. Ken Sloan is a predator. Not just with Lena, I've found 6 other married women he's targeted in the past 2 years. All wealthy, all vulnerable, all looking for validation their husbands couldn't provide. How did you? I have resources. He turned back to face her. What I need from you is inside information. His routines, his passwords, his vulnerabilities. Everything you know about him. Aria's eyes narrowed. And what do I get in return? The satisfaction of watching him lose everything. Calvin returned to his desk. His job, his reputation, his future prospects. When I'm done, he won't be able to get hired as a dog walker in this city. That's a start. Aria leaned back. But I want more. I want to be involved. I want to see his face when it all falls apart. Calvin's lips curved in a slight smile. Tell me about his apartment. Security systems? Cameras? Basic stuff. Key card entry in the lobby. No cameras in the hallways. Aria pulled out her phone. I still have his spare key. He never asked for it back. Keep it. Calvin made a note. What about his phone? Computer. Password for everything is his birthday plus fitness, January 15th. He's not exactly a genius. She paused. He keeps videos. Of all of them. Your wife included. Calvin's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened slightly on his pen. Show me his social media accounts. For the next hour, they went through Ken's digital life. His Instagram showing off clients, his Facebook full of motivational quotes, his dating app profiles where he hunted for wealthy women. He's careful about messages, Aria explained. Deletes everything compromising right away. But I know he keeps backups on his laptop. Not careful enough. Calvin turned his monitor, showing her a screen full of recovered texts. Technology leaves traces. Always. Aria leaned forward, reading the messages between Ken and Lena. Her face hardened. They really thought they were untouchable, didn't they? A common mistake. Calvin closed the window. Here's what happens next. You're going to reconcile with him. What? Aria stood up. No way. I'm not. Listen carefully. Calvin's voice cut through her protest. You go back to him. Tell him you've changed, that you understand now. He'll believe it because his ego demands it. You become his confidant again, his trusted partner. And all the while, you'll be gathering evidence. Aria sank back into her chair. He'll never trust me again. He will. Calvin's certainty was absolute. Because you're going to tell him exactly what he wants to hear. That you were crazy, possessive, unreasonable. That you've gotten help, grown, changed. His type can't resist a narrative where they're the hero who helps someone improve. And then what? Then we use everything you gather. Every video, every message, every dirty secret. Calvin opened another file on his computer. But it has to be perfect. The timing, the execution, everything. One mistake, and they might recover. Aria was quiet for a moment, processing. You really hate them, don't you? Hate requires emotion. Calvin's voice remained neutral. This is about justice. No, Aria studied his face. This is about destruction. Complete and total. Are you having second thoughts? Hell no. She straightened in her chair. When do we start? Calvin checked his watch. Ken has a training session with my wife in 1 hour. Go to the gym. Make sure he sees you. Be emotional, but not aggressive. Plant the seed. And what will you be doing? Preparing the ground for phase 2. He handed her a new phone. Use this for contact. It's secure, untraceable. The only number in it is mine. Aria took the phone, turning it over in her hands. You've done this before, haven't you? destroyed people. In business, sometimes destruction is necessary. Calvin's eyes met hers. The method doesn't matter, only the result. She stood, tucking the phone into her jacket. I should get to the gym. Want to look appropriately desperate for my ex. One more thing. Calvin's voice stopped her at the door. If you betray me, if you warn them, if you deviate from the plan in any way. He let the silence fill in the rest. The area smile was cold. Trust me, Mr. Mercer. Betrayal isn't in my vocabulary. Not anymore. After she left, Calvin returned to his computer. He opened his private server, creating a new folder labeled Operation Containment. Inside, he began organizing subfolders: financial records, surveillance, communications, legal documentation. His phone buzzed with a message from Lena. Working late again. Don't wait up. Calvin allowed himself a small smile as he typed his response. Take all the time you need. Because time was now his weapon. And every minute they spent thinking they were safe was another minute he spent preparing their destruction. Calvin sat in his home office, reviewing the morning's security footage from Elite Fitness. On screen, Arya performed her role, perfectly appearing near the smoothie bar just as Ken finished his session with Lena. The camera caught Ken's double take, the momentary flash of panic in his eyes. His phone buzzed with a message from Arya. Mission accomplished. He looked like he saw a ghost. Details, Calvin typed back. Started crying when I saw him. Told him I'd been in therapy. Then I understood why he left. His ego ate it up. Calvin switched camera feeds, watching Lena's reaction to the scene. She'd stood frozen, pretending to check her phone while clearly monitoring the situation. Good. Let her worry. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Mercer? Your wife is here to see you. Send her in. Lena entered, wearing workout clothes and a carefully constructed smile. Hi, honey. I thought maybe we could have lunch together. Calvin didn't look up from his computer. Can't. Meeting with investors in 20 minutes. Oh. She lingered by his desk. I just thought, we haven't spent much time together lately. Now he did look at her, his gaze calculating. Interesting observation. Why do you think that is? Work, I guess. We've both been so busy. She tried another smile. Maybe we could do dinner tonight? That new Italian place you mentioned. You have a late meeting tonight. Calvin turned back to his screen. Remember, I could reschedule. Don't bother. He began typing an email. I made other plans. Lena's hand tightened on her gym bag. With who? Does it matter? His voice carried just a hint of edge. Of course it matters. You're my husband. Calvin stopped typing and looked at her again. Am I? The question hung in the air between them. Lena's face paled slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just an observation. You check his watch. Was there something specific you needed? The investors are waiting. No, She took a step toward the door, then turned back. Are you okay? You seem different lately. Different how? Distant. Cold. Calvin allowed himself a small smile. Maybe I'm just busy. With work. The emphasis on the last word was subtle but clear. Lena's hand moved instinctively toward her phone. Right. Work. I should go. After she left, Calvin opened his secure messaging app and contacted Victor. Start phase 2 of the financial preparations. The reply came quickly. Already in motion. The account restrictions begin tomorrow. Calvin's next call was to their bank. This is Calvin Mercer. I need to discuss some unusual transactions on my joint accounts. Of course, Mr. Mercer. How can we help? I'm seeing several large withdrawals to unknown accounts. I want them flagged for potential fraud. Right away, sir. Would you like us to freeze the accounts temporarily? No need yet. Just monitor and restrict any transfers over $5,000. He ended the call and opened his laptop, accessing the building's security cameras. Lena stood in the elevator, frantically typing on her phone. He pulled up the intercepted messages. To Ken. Something's wrong. Calvin's acting strange. From Ken. Relax, baby. He doesn't know anything. To Ken. But what if he does? What if someone saw us? From Ken. Nobody saw anything. And even if they did, what can he prove? Calvin's smile grew slightly. Let them worry. Let them wonder. The fear would make them sloppy, and sloppy people made mistakes. His phone rang. Camila Royce, Lena's supposed best friend. Right on schedule. Mr. Mercer, do you have a moment? Camila, what can I do for you? It's about Lena. She paused. I'm worried about her. Oh, Calvin kept his voice neutral. How so? She's been different lately. Secretive. And those sessions at Elite Fitness, what about them? Camila lowered her voice. That trainer she works with. I've heard things about him. About how he targets wealthy women. Have you shared these concerns with Lena? I tried. She got defensive. Said I was imagining things. Calvin made a thoughtful sound. Thank you for telling me, Camila. I appreciate your loyalty. I care about both of you. If something's going on, why don't we discuss this in person? Calvin suggested. Coffee tomorrow. Yes, of course. The usual place. Perfect. He ended the call and sent a message to Arya. Pieces are moving. Be ready. Later that evening, Calvin reviewed the day's progress. Lena's credit cards had been quietly restricted, her access to their investment accounts limited. Small inconveniences that would grow into major obstacles. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He opened it to find a video Ken and Lena entering his apartment building. The timestamp was from 10 minutes ago. Thank you for the update, he typed to his hired surveillance team. Continue monitoring. He poured himself a drink and walked to the windows. The city sparkled below, unaware of the drama unfolding in its midst. His phone buzzed again. Lena. Meeting running late. Don't wait up. Calvin didn't reply. Instead, he opened his laptop and began composing an email to their circle of friends. A dinner party this weekend. A chance for everyone to witness the first cracks in Lena's perfect facade. His phone chimed with a response from Arya. Ken took the bait completely. Wants to meet tomorrow to talk things through. Remember the plan? He replied. You're vulnerable, regretful, eager to reconcile. Don't worry. I should have been an actress. Calvin smiled at that. They were all actors in this play, Lena pretending to be the faithful wife, Ken playing the confident seducer, Arya portraying the repentant ex. But he was the director, and this performance would end exactly as he planned. A message from Victor appeared. Financial restrictions in place. First decline transaction should happen tomorrow. Perfect. Lena's carefully constructed world would begin crumbling, one small piece at a time. The expensive lunches with friends would be declined. The shopping sprees would end in embarrassment. The hotel rooms, well, those would require cash she no longer had access to. His phone buzzed one final time, another message from Lena. I miss you. Calvin stared at the words, remembering every lie, every secret meeting, every betrayal. He thought about responding, about playing along with her guilt-driven attempt at connection. Instead, he deleted the message and returned to his plans. Because tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tomorrow, Lena would learn that actions had consequences, that trust once broken could never be repaired. Tomorrow, the illusion of her perfect life would start to shatter. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Blanc, an upscale cafe where Chicago's elite gathered to see and be seen. Calvin sat at a corner table, watching Camila Royce approach. Her designer bag and careful makeup couldn't hide the anxiety in her movements. Thank you for meeting me, Camila said, sliding into the seat across from him. I wasn't sure you'd want to discuss this. Calvin gestured to the waiting server. Coffee first. Then we'll talk. After their drinks arrived, Calvin studied Camila's face. She'd been Lena's best friend for years, sharing shopping trips, spa days, and secrets. But beneath the friendship lay something darker: envy, resentment, ambition. Tell me about Ken Sloan, Calvin said, his voice quiet. Camila's fingers tightened around her cup. What do you want to know? Everything you haven't told Lena you know. She glanced around the cafe before leaning forward. He has a reputation at Elite Fitness. Before Lena, there was a woman named Rachel, married to a real estate developer. Then Patricia, wife of a surgeon. Both marriages ended in divorce. And you didn't think to warn Lena? I tried. Camila's voice cracked slightly. She accused me of being jealous, said I was trying to ruin her happiness. Calvin took a measured sip of his coffee. Are you jealous? What? It's a simple question, Camila. Are you jealous of Lena? Color rose in her cheeks. That's not fair. Life rarely is. Calvin's eyes held hers. Tell me what you see when you look at Lena. The perfect marriage, the successful career, the expensive lifestyle. Everything you want but don't have. Stop it. She trusts you, doesn't she? Tells you everything. About Ken, about their meetings, about how they laugh at their spouse's ignorance. Tears appeared in Camila's eyes. She said you were cold, that you never really loved her. Did she? Calvin's voice remained neutral. What else did she say? That Ken makes her feel alive. Desired. Camila wiped her eyes. She shows me the messages, the pictures. It's like she wants me to be envious. Because she does. Calvin reached into his jacket and removed an envelope. Just like she wanted these photos of you and Michael at the Lake Forest Hotel last month. Camila's face went white. How did you? Insurance. In case you ever threatened to expose her affair. He slid the envelope across the table. She's been gathering ammunition against everyone close to her. Even her best friend. Camila's hand shook as she opened the envelope. Inside were photos of her and Michael, a married banking executive, entering and leaving a hotel. I never thought. We were supposed to be friends. Friends don't stockpile blackmail material. Calvin's voice softened. But enemies do. What do you want from me? The truth. At the dinner party this weekend, when Lena's card gets declined, when she starts making excuses about bank errors and technical glitches, I want you to share your concerns with our friends. Your worries about her stability, her judgment. Understanding dawned in Camila's eyes. You're going to destroy her. No, Camila. She destroyed herself. I'm simply revealing what was already there. She was quiet for a moment, processing. The photos of me and Michael will never see the light of day. Calvin stood, straightening his jacket. As long as you remember who your real friends are. After leaving Camila, Calvin made his way to his next meeting. His phone buzzed with updates from Arya. Ken's eating up the Reconciliation Act. Wants to take me to dinner. Except, he typed back, but insist on somewhere private. His apartment. The response came quickly. Already suggested it. Said I wanted to talk without interruptions. Calvin smiled. Arya was proving to be a valuable asset. His next stop was the offices of the Chicago Business Journal, where Rebecca Torres waited in the lobby. Mr. Mercer. Rebecca stood, extending her hand. Thank you for the exclusive interview. The pleasure's mine. Calvin followed her to a conference room. Though I should warn you, my personal life is off limits. Of course. Rebecca set up her recorder. We'll focus on Mercer Technologies' new cybersecurity initiative. Unless, she paused. You want to address the rumors about financial irregularities in your wife's marketing department. Calvin raised an eyebrow. Rumors, anonymous tips, suggesting improper use of company resources. Private expenses charged to corporate accounts. Interesting. Calvin leaned back. Off the record, Rebecca turned off her recorder. Completely. Look into Elite Fitness, their corporate wellness program. Pay special attention to private training sessions billed to marketing department accounts. Any particular trainer I should focus on? I'm sure a journalist of your caliber can figure that out. Calvin stood. Now, shall we discuss cybersecurity? Later that afternoon, Calvin met with Victor to review their progress. The first credit card decline happened an hour ago, Victor reported. At Neiman Marcus. Quite a scene, according to the sales staff. And the bank accounts. Transfer to Ken's account was blocked. She tried 3 times. Calvin nodded. What about the dinner party arrangements? Everything's set. Private dining room at Gibson's. All guests confirmed. Victor paused. Are you sure about this? It's very public. That's the point. Calvin pulled up a document on his tablet. I want witnesses when she falls apart. When the perfect mask cracks. His phone buzzed Lena calling. He let it go to voicemail. She'll try to warn Ken, Victor said. Let her. The more they panic, the more mistakes they'll make. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. By evening, Calvin's plan was fully in motion. Camila had already started dropping hints in their social circle about Lena's strange behavior. Rebecca Torres was digging into Elite Fitness's financial records. And Arya was preparing to plant evidence in Ken's apartment. His phone lit up with a message from Lena. The cards aren't working. There must be some mistake at the bank. Calvin typed back. Strange. Mine are fine. Can you call them? I tried, but they said only the primary account holder can authorize changes. In meetings all day. Try again tomorrow. He set his phone down and turned to the window. The sun was setting over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of red. Somewhere out there, Lena was beginning to realize that her carefully constructed world wasn't as solid as she thought. Another message arrived, this time from Camila. I did what you asked. Told everyone I'm worried about Lena's mental state. That she's been acting erratic, making poor decisions. Good. Keep it subtle. Concerned, not accusatory. The pieces were falling into place. Soon, the whispers would start. The sideways glances. The careful distance people put between themselves and someone in free fall. His phone buzzed one final time. A video from Arya. Ken agreeing to dinner at his apartment tomorrow night. In the background, a message from Lena glowed on his phone screen. Calvin allowed himself a small smile. Tomorrow, the next phase would begin. Tomorrow, their world would start to crumble in earnest. Because revenge, like all good things, was best served in careful portions. Small bites that built to a feast of destruction. The private dining room at Gibson's hummed with conversation as Chicago's elite gathered for what they thought was a simple dinner party. Calvin stood near the entrance, greeting guests with practiced charm while watching Lena flutter nervously between groups. Calvin, darling. Amanda Pierce air-kissed his cheek. You've outdone yourself with this gathering. Life's too short not to celebrate with friends, he replied, catching Camila's eye across the room. She gave him a subtle nod. The whispers had already begun. Lena appeared at his side, her smile tight. Honey, could we talk for a moment? Privately. Of course. He followed her to a quiet corner. Is something wrong? The cards are still not working, she whispered. I can't access any of our accounts. Even my business credit card was declined today. Calvin frowned, the picture of concerned husband. That's strange. Did you call the bank? They won't talk to me. They keep saying only you can authorize changes. Her voice carried an edge of panic. I had to borrow money from Camila to buy gas. I'll look into it Monday, he said, turning away. Let's not spoil the party with financial talk. Monday? But I need. Mr. Mercer. Rebecca Torres approached, notepad in hand. Mind if I ask a few follow-up questions about that elite fitness story? Lena's face went pale. What elite fitness story? Oh, just looking into their corporate wellness program. Rebecca said smoothly. Fascinating financial structure they have there, especially regarding private training sessions. Calvin watched Lena's hands begin to shake. Excuse me, she mumbled, hurrying toward the restroom. His phone buzzed a message from Arya, in position at Ken's apartment. You won't believe what I found. Document everything, he typed back. The evening progressed according to plan. When the first course arrived, Lena had composed herself enough to rejoin the party. She sat between Camila and Thomas Wright, trying to maintain her usual social grace. Lena, dear, Amanda called from across the table. Is everything okay? Camila mentioned you've been under stress lately. I'm fine, Lena said quickly. Just busy with work. Of course, Camila chimed in, concern dripping from her voice. Though I've noticed you seem distracted lately. Distant. We're all worried about you. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Lena's cheeks flushed as she reached for her wine glass. Speaking of work, Rebecca added, I'd love your perspective on Elite Fitness's marketing strategy. I hear you're quite involved with their program. Wine sloshed over the rim of Lena's glass. I don't. That is, I'm not. The bill, Mr. Mercer. The waiter appeared at Calvin's elbow, presenting the leather folder. Calvin handed over his card. Moments later, the waiter returned. I'm sorry, sir, but Mrs. Mercer's card appears to be invalid. Would you like to use a different one? Silence fell over the table. All eyes turned to Lena, who sat frozen, her face a mask of mortification. How embarrassing, Amanda Stage whispered to her companion. Calvin pulled out another card. Must be a banking error. These things happen. But the damage was done. He could see the wheels turning in their guests' minds, connecting dots. The decline card, the stress, the Elite Fitness connection. His phone lit up with another message from Arya. Videos downloaded. Photos copied. Bank statements found. Wanting to send them now? Not yet, he replied. Wait for my signal. The dinner continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Where before there had been warmth, now there was calculation. Every smile directed at Lena carried a hint of judgment, every question a subtle probe. "Thomas," Calvin said during dessert, "how's the investigation into that employee who embezzled from your company?" "Devastating," Thomas replied. "She thought she covered her tracks, but money leaves traces. Always." Lena's spoon clattered against her plate. "If you'll excuse me," she stood abruptly. "I'm not feeling well." As she rushed from the room, Camila leaned toward the group. "She's been like this for weeks. Erratic, secretive. I'm really concerned." Calvin's phone buzzed again. A message from Ken to Lena intercepted. "Baby, what's going on? My car got declined too." And some reporters asking questions at the gym. He allowed himself a small smile as he typed a message to Victor. "Execute Phase 3. The response was immediate. "Done. Bank accounts frozen. Credit cards canceled. Safe deposit box emptied." The party began to wind down, guests departing with meaningful looks and whispered conversations. Calvin played his part perfectly, the concerned husband, worried about his wife's strange behavior but maintaining dignity. "Call me if you need anything." Amanda squeezed his arm. "These situations, well, we've all seen them before." After the last guest left, Calvin found Lena in the restaurant's lobby, frantically typing on her phone. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "You did this," she accused, her voice shaking. "Somehow you did this." "Did what?" "Arranged a dinner party. The cards, the accounts, the reporter." She stepped closer. "What do you know?" Calvin met her gaze calmly. "I know enough." The color drained from her face. "Calvin, I can explain." "No need." He turned toward the door. "I'm sure Ken could drive you home, since you've been sharing so much else with him." "Please," she grabbed his arm. "Let me explain. It's not what you think." "Remove your hand," he said quietly, "or the next phase begins now." She released him as if burned. "Next phase?" "Ask Ken about the videos on his laptop." Calvin straightened his tie. "The ones Arya found tonight." "Arya? What? How?" "Good night, Lena." He walked away, leaving her standing alone in the lobby. Outside, his driver held the car door open. Before getting in, Calvin sent one final message to Arya. "Send the videos to Rebecca." "All of them." His phone lit up with a response from Victor. "Everything's ready for Monday." Total financial isolation. Calvin settled into the car's leather seat, watching Chicago's lights blur past the window. Phase 1 was complete. Lena's social world was cracking, her financial security evaporating, her secrets bubbling to the surface. But this was just the beginning. Monday would bring new horrors: bank accounts emptied, credit cards canceled, membership accounts closed. The carefully constructed facade of her life would continue to crumble, piece by piece, because revenge, like empires, wasn't built in a day. It was built in careful stages, each move calculated, each strike precise, and Calvin Mercer was just getting started. Monday morning arrived with the precision of a guillotine blade. Calvin sat in his office, watching multiple screens track the cascade of destruction he'd set in motion. Every notification represented another piece of Lena's world crumbling. His phone rang Lena's number. "The accounts," she said without preamble, her voice trembling. "Everything's frozen, even my personal account." "How unfortunate," Calvin replied, his tone neutral. "Don't play games with me," Lena snapped. "I know you're behind this." "Behind what?" "Banking errors. I had a meeting with clients this morning. My corporate card was declined. Do you know how humiliating that was?" Calvin smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Almost as humiliating as having an affair with a personal trainer." Silence stretched across the line. When Lena spoke again, her voice was smaller. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to ensure you'll never work in marketing again." He pulled up an email on his screen. "The Chicago Business Journal is running an interesting story today. Corporate funds used to finance affair. Elite fitness scandal rocks Chicago business world." "You can't." "I already did." Calvin's voice remained steady. "Check your email. Your resignation letter was sent to the board 10 minutes ago." "My resignation? I never." "The evidence suggests otherwise. Bank records showing personal expenses charged to company accounts. Hotel rooms booked under business travel. Rather damning, don't you think?" A choked sob came through the phone. "Calvin, please." We could talk about this. We are talking. He opened another window on his computer. By the way, Ken's employment at Elite Fitness has been terminated. Something about inappropriate relationships with clients. The videos on his laptop were quite convincing. Videos. The panic in her voice was palpable. What videos? All of them, Lena. Every secret meeting, every private moment you thought was safe. Currently being reviewed by Elite Fitness's legal team. No. He could hear her breathing quicken. You're bluffing. Calvin forwarded an email to her phone. See for yourself. A moment passed. Then her voice returned, cracking. How did you get these? Arya was very helpful. Amazing what a scorned woman can accomplish with a spare key and a desire for revenge. Arya? Ken's ex. Lena's laugh held a note of hysteria. You're working with her? Was working with her. Past tense. The evidence has already been collected, documented, and distributed to relevant parties. I'll fight this, Lena said, but her voice betrayed her uncertainty. I'll get a lawyer. With what money? Calvin's question hung in the air. Every account is frozen. Every credit card canceled. The prenup you were so carefully working around? Ironclad. The house. Check the deed. He cut her off. It's in my name only. Always has been. Another silence, longer this time. When Lena spoke again, tears colored her words. What do you want from me? Nothing. Calvin's voice carried no emotion. You no longer exist in my world. Calvin, wait. He ended the call and turned to his computer. A message from Rebecca Torres popped up. Stories Live. Already getting massive engagement. Calvin opened the Chicago Business Journal's website. The headline blazed across the screen. Marketing Executive's Affair Leads to Financial Scandal. Elite Fitness Trainer Fired. Multiple investigations launched. His phone buzzed with a text from Arya. Ken's losing it. Call me crying about his reputation being ruined. Good, Calvin replied. Stay clear of him. Your part is done. Another call came through Elite Fitness's CEO, Mr. Mercer. The man's voice was tight with controlled panic. About this morning's article, Roger, Calvin interrupted smoothly. I trust your legal team has reviewed all the evidence. Yes, and I want to assure you that Ken Sloan's behavior does not reflect our company's values. Save it. Calvin's tone was ice. Expect a lawsuit by week's end. My attorneys will be in touch. He ended the call and stood, walking to his window. Chicago spread before him, the city where he'd built his empire, where Lena had thought she could tear it down. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Mercer is here. She's quite insistent. Send her in. Lena burst through the door, mascara streaking her cheeks. You have to stop this. What? Calvin didn't turn from the window. Because you're destroying everything. My career, my reputation. You destroyed those yourself. Now he faced her. Every time you met Ken. Every lie you told. Every company dollar you spent on your affair. I'll tell everyone what you did, she threatened. How you set me up, planted evidence. With what proof? Calvin's smile was cold. Your phone's records? Mysteriously corrupted. Security footage? Technical malfunction. Your only ally is a disgraced personal trainer who's probably halfway to leaving the state. Lena sank into a chair, her designer outfit crumpling. I never meant to hurt you. Interesting. Calvin sat behind his desk. That's exactly what my mother said to my father. Every time she got caught. I'm not your mother. No. His voice was soft, dangerous. You're worse. She was just a drunk who couldn't keep her promises. You're a calculating manipulator who thought she could play games with my life. It wasn't a game, Lena whispered. I loved you once. Past tense noted. Calvin pressed a button on his phone. Security will escort you out. Don't attempt to enter this building again. Where am I supposed to go? Tears fell freely now. You've frozen everything. That's not my concern. He turned back to his computer. Goodbye, Lena. As security led her away, Calvin opened his email. Messages flooded in from their social circle, each one expressing shock at the scandal, distancing themselves from Lena's disgrace. His phone lit up with a text from Victor. House eviction papers ready. When do you want to serve them? Calvin thought about the dinner party they had planned for the weekend. All their friends gathered to witness Lena's final humiliation. Saturday, he typed back. During the party, Because revenge, like justice, was best served with an audience. The Chicago Business Journal's article spread through social media like wildfire. Calvin watched from his office as Ken Sloan's carefully crafted image imploded in real time. The trainer's Instagram followers dropped by the thousands as more women came forward with stories. His phone buzzed Aria calling. "Ken's at my apartment," she said without greeting. "He's drunk, demanding I tell him what I did with the videos." "Is he violent?" "Not yet, but he's getting there." Aria's voice was tense. "He keeps saying he'll make me pay for ruining his life." Calvin pressed a button on his desk. "Security is on the way. Keep him talking." He switched to speaker mode, recording the conversation as Ken's voice carried through. "You backstabbing witch," Ken shouted in the background. "I trusted you. We were going to start over." "We were never starting over," Aria shot back. "You're a manipulative fraud who deserved everything you got. You think you're so smart." Ken's voice grew closer. "Wait until I tell everyone how you broke into my apartment, stole my property." "You mean the videos you took without consent?" Aria's laugh was sharp. "Go ahead, confess to more crimes. The police will love that." Calvin sent a quick text to Victor, Ken Sloan at Aria's apartment. "Get the restraining order ready." The sounds of breaking glass came through the phone. "Ken, stop," Aria yelled. "You're only making it worse." "Worse?" Ken's laugh held an edge of hysteria. "My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. How could it get worse?" "Step away from her." A new voice security had arrived. "This is private property," Ken slurred. "You can't." "The police are on their way," the security guard stated. "Your choice how they find you." Silence fell, then the sound of footsteps retreating. "This isn't over," Ken called back. "Tell Mercer he hasn't won." After security confirmed Ken had left the building, Calvin spoke into the phone. "Are you all right?" "Fine." Aria's voice was steady. "He's pathetic when he's cornered. The police will want a statement. Already recording everything on my phone." She paused. "You knew he'd snap like this, didn't you? Men like Ken can't handle losing control." Calvin opened his laptop, checking the surveillance feeds. "Their ego makes them predictable." He mentioned Lena, Aria added. "So they're both being set up that they'll prove it somehow." Calvin smiled. "Let them try. The evidence is irrefutable." After ending the call, he opened his email to find a message from Rebecca Torres. "Ken Sloan just showed up at our office, demanding to tell his side of the story. Security removed him, but not before he made quite a scene." "Want the video?" "Send it," he replied. The footage showed Ken, his designer clothes wrinkled, trying to push past security guards. "It's all lies," he shouted at the camera. "Mercer set us up. I can prove it." Calvin forwarded the video to Victor with a simple message. "Time to move on the assault charges." His phone rang Thomas right. "Calvin," Thomas sounded concerned. "Have you seen the news? That trainer from Elite Fitness is having some kind of breakdown." "So I've heard. He was just escorted out of the Chicago Athletic Club, causing a scene in the lobby, telling everyone who would listen about his affair with Lena, trying to justify it somehow." Calvin's voice remained neutral. "How unfortunate. The man's clearly unstable," Thomas continued. "And Lena, well, no one's heard from her since that article broke. I'm sure she's fine." "Calvin," Thomas paused. "We've known each other a long time. If you need anything," actually, Calvin checked his watch. "I could use your help with something. The house party this weekend, I'd appreciate your presence." "Of course. But are you sure you want to host, given everything that's happened?" "More than ever." Calvin's smile was cold. "It's time to clear the air completely." After hanging up, he received another update. Ken had been arrested outside Elite Fitness, trying to force his way into the building to confront the board. His phone lit up with a text from Lena. "What have you done to Ken? He's losing his mind." "I haven't done anything," Calvin typed back. "His choices, his consequences." "He's talking about going to the police, telling them how you set us up." "With what evidence?" "The videos he took illegally?" "The company funds you misappropriated?" No response came. Calvin could imagine her realizing the trap they'd walked into, how every attempt to fight back would only dig them deeper. A notification popped up. Ken's booking photo had been released. The once polished trainer looked wild-eyed and disheveled, his mugshot already circulating on social media. Calvin forwarded the image to Victor. Add assault and breaking and entering to the charges. Already done, Victor replied. Bond hearing tomorrow. Given his outburst today, he'll likely be held until trial. Perfect. One piece removed from the board. Now for the final act. Calvin opened the house party invitation list, reviewing the confirmed guests. Everyone who mattered in their social circle would be there to witness Lena's final humiliation. His phone buzzed with a message from Camila. Just saw Ken getting arrested on the news. Lena keeps calling me, begging for help. What should I tell her? Tell her to come to the party Saturday, Calvin replied. Tell her it's her chance to explain everything. Because that's what Lena would want an audience, a chance to spin her story, to paint herself as the victim. She'd never suspect it was actually her execution. Calvin stood, walking to his window as the sun set over Chicago. Somewhere out there, Ken sat in a jail cell, his life in ruins. Lena hid in whatever hotel would still accept cash, watching her world crumble. But the real show hadn't even started yet. Saturday would bring the final act, the complete destruction of everything they thought they could protect, because revenge, like justice, demanded an audience. And Calvin Mercer always gave his audiences a performance they'd never forget. Saturday evening arrived with the precision of a carefully placed knife. Calvin stood in the penthouse living room, watching caterers arrange elegant appetizers and pour expensive wine. Everything had to be perfect for tonight's performance. The video system is ready, Victor reported, checking his tablet. Every screen in the house can be activated simultaneously. And the papers? Sheriff's deputy is waiting downstairs. He'll serve the eviction notice on your signal. Calvin adjusted his tie in the reflection of a window. Any word from our guest of honor? Camila confirms Lena's planning to attend. Says she's convinced she can explain everything. Make people understand. Predictable. Calvin's smile was razor thin. She always did love an audience. The first guests arrived at 8, dressed in evening wear and curiosity. They moved through the penthouse in small groups, whispered conversations trailing in their wake. Bold of him to host a party after everything, Amanda Pierce murmured to her husband. Power move, Thomas Wright replied, accepting a glass of wine, showing he has nothing to hide. Calvin played the perfect host, moving smoothly between groups, accepting condolences with graceful dismissal. These things happen, he would say. Best to face them directly. At 8:30, the elevator chimed. Lena stepped out, wearing a black dress that probably cost what little cash she had left. Her makeup couldn't quite hide the shadows under her eyes. Darling, her voice carried forced brightness. Thank you for inviting me. Wouldn't dream of excluding you. Calvin's tone was ice. After all, you're the guest of honor. Fear flickered across her face. What do you mean? You'll see. He turned to greet more arriving guests, leaving her standing alone. Camila approached Lena, sympathy warring with satisfaction in her eyes. You came. I wasn't sure you would. I had to. Lena grabbed a glass of wine from passing waiter. People need to hear the truth. And what truth is that? Calvin's voice cut through their conversation. The truth about the company funds you embezzled? Or the truth about the videos Ken took without consent? Heads turned. Conversations quieted. That's not. Lena started. Or perhaps, Calvin continued, his voice carrying across the now silent room. You'd like to tell everyone about the prenup you were planning to violate? The one you discussed in those interesting text messages. You hacked my phone. Lena's voice rose. You planted evidence. Did I? Calvin pressed a button on his phone. Every screen in the penthouse blazed to life. Security footage from Elite Fitness showed Lena and Ken in compromising positions. Text messages scrolled across other screens. Bank statements. Hotel receipts. Oh my God, Amanda whispered. Lena spun around, seeing her secrets displayed on every wall. Turn them off. But we're just getting to the interesting part. Calvin's voice was calm. The part where you and Ken planned to divorce your spouses, using evidence you'd fabricated. That's not what happened. No. Another button press. Ken's voice filled the room. Once the divorce is final, we'll take him for everything. These videos, the fake receipts he'll pay us to keep quiet. Lena's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Calvin, please. Please what? He stepped closer. Please don't show everyone who you really are. Please don't reveal how you planned to destroy me. I never. Never what? Never meant for me to find out? Never meant for it to go this far. His laugh was cold. You sound just like my mother. Same excuses, same lies. The elevator chimed again. A uniformed deputy stepped out, papers in hand. Mrs. Mercer. The deputy approached. You're being served with an eviction notice. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. Lena stared at the papers thrust into her hands. You can't. This is my home. Check the deed, Calvin suggested. It was never your home. Just like it was never your money, your success, your life. You were always just visiting, playing pretend. You bastard. Tears streaked her makeup. You cold, calculating bastard. Better a calculating bastard than a faithless wife. Calvin turned to their guests. I apologize for the drama, but I believed you all deserved to know the truth. The complete truth. Murmurs of support rippled through the crowd. Lena looked around wildly, finding no allies among the faces she'd once called friends. Where am I supposed to go? Her voice cracked. That stopped being my concern the moment you decided to betray me. Calvin's voice was final. Though I hear Ken has a nice cell at the county jail. Maybe they'll let you visit. Lena's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, surrounded by the shards of her broken wine glass. Security will escort you out, Calvin said. Don't forget the eviction papers. I'd hate for you to miss any deadlines. As security officers helped Lena to her feet, her sobs echoed through the silent room. She tried one last time. I loved you once. Doesn't that mean anything? Calvin met her eyes. Love without loyalty is just another weapon. You taught me that. They watched her disappear into the elevator, mascara streaking her cheeks. Eviction papers clutched her chest. Well, Amanda broke the silence. I suppose that explains the dress code on the invitation. Black tie for a funeral. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Conversations resumed, but with a different tone now. No one wanted to be the next person in Calvin Mercer's crosshairs. His phone buzzed a message from Victor. Lena's card was declined at the Four Seasons. She's trying to marry it now. Don't interfere, Calvin typed back. Let her learn how far cash can take her in this city. The party continued, but it wasn't really a party anymore. It was a statement, a warning, a public execution of reputation and status. Because in Chicago's high society, money could be regained, but status once lost was gone forever. And Lena Mercer, who had risked everything for stolen moments with a personal trainer, was about to learn just how cold the city could be to those who fell from grace. 1 week after the house party, Calvin sat in his office reviewing the aftermath of his revenge. His computer displayed multiple news articles about the scandal. Elite fitness trainer denied bail. Marketing executives fall from grace. Chicago's social circle reels from high-profile affair. His phone buzzed the building security desk. Mr. Mercer? Ms. Mercer is here. She's quite insistent about seeing you. Calvin checked the lobby camera feed. Lena stood there, her designer clothes replaced by department store wear, her perfect makeup gone. 7 days had aged her years. Send her up, he said, and alert security to be ready. Minutes later, Lena walked into his office. The confidence was gone from her stride, replaced by desperate determination. You've destroyed everything, she said, staying near the door. No, Calvin didn't look up from his computer. You destroyed everything. I merely revealed the truth. The truth. Lena's laugh was bitter. You call what you did the truth? You manipulated evidence, turned my friends against me, ruined my career. I expose your affair, your embezzlement, your plans to violate our prenup. Now he met her eyes. Every piece of evidence was real. Every secret revealed was yours. I can't even rent an apartment. Her voice cracked. No one will hire me. My own family won't take my calls. Actions have consequences. This isn't consequences. She stepped forward. This is destruction. Complete and total destruction. Yes. Calvin's voice was cold. Just like you, and can plan for me. The only difference is, I succeeded where you failed. Lena sank into a chair, her anger deflating. I never meant to hurt you. Another lie. Calvin stood, walking to his window. You meant exactly that. Every secret meeting, every stolen moment, every plan to take what was mine, it was all intentional. We could have divorced like normal people, she whispered. Had a civilized separation. Calvin turned, his eyes hard. Like my parents? Where my mother bled my father dry, destroyed his reputation, left him a hollow shell. He stepped closer. I learned from his mistake. Never give betrayal a second chance. So now what? Lena looked up at him. You've won. I'm ruined. What more do you want? Want? Calvin's smile was razor sharp. I don't want anything from you. You no longer exist in my world. I was your wife. You were a role in a play. He returned to his desk. The loving wife, the successful executive, the social butterfly. All acts, all lies. Not all of it was lies. Tears streaked her cheeks. We had good times, real happiness. Perhaps. Calvin's voice remained neutral. But happiness without trust is just delayed pain. You taught me that. His phone buzzed a message from Victor. Ken Sloan took a plea deal. 3 years for the assault charges and illegal recordings. Your boyfriend just pleaded guilty, Calvin informed her. 3 years in prison. Though his career was over anyway. Lena's face crumpled. He promised we'd face this together. Men like Ken survive by betraying others. Surely you knew that when you chose him. What happens to me now? That's not my concern. Calvin pressed a button on his desk. Security will escort you out. Don't attempt to contact me again. Calvin, please. Lena stood as security entered. Give me something. Anything. He looked at her one last time, remembering the woman he'd thought she was, the life they pretended to have. I gave you everything once, he said quietly. You chose to throw it away for cheap thrills and cheaper promises. Now you get to live with that choice. As security led her away, Calvin received another message, this time from Rebecca Torres. Follow-up story running tomorrow. Sources say Lena Mercer spotted applying for waitress positions on the South Side. Perfect, he typed back. Make sure it mentions Ken's plea deal. The sun was setting over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of victory. Calvin poured himself a drink and watched darkness claim the city. His phone buzzed with social invitations, business opportunities, life moving forward, because that's what survivors did. They moved forward, leaving the ashes of betrayal behind. 6 months later, Calvin stood in his new office in the recently completed Mercer Tower. The view was better, the security tighter, the success sweeter. His phone displayed a news alert. Former marketing executive Lena Mercer relocates to Milwaukee, citing fresh start. Another headline below, disgraced trainer Ken Sloan begins prison sentence. A message from Aria popped up. Saw Lena at a diner in Milwaukee. Serving coffee, living in a studio apartment. Karma's real. Calvin didn't respond. He didn't need to. The game was over, the victory complete. Thomas Wright's voice came through the intercom. Board meeting in 5 minutes, Calvin. The Asian expansion looks promising. On my way. He straightened his tie, adjusted his cuffs, and smiled at his reflection. Chicago's skyline stretched before him, a testament to power, ambition, and the price of betrayal. Because some lessons had to be taught harshly. Some betrayals demanded complete destruction. And Calvin Mercer, who had learned from his father's mistakes, would never be the fool who gave second chances. The elevator opened, ready to carry him to his next conquest. Behind him, the sun caught the windows of his tower, reflecting light across a city that would never forget what happened to those who crossed Calvin Mercer. Victory, like revenge, was best enjoyed in solitude.